is the fact that if we add something in the comments, like let's yeet that haw, and I hit submit, what I really want to happen is the comment sort of literally get added to that comment box. So instead of just hi, it can say anything that I want it to say. And the reason it's important that it's JavaScript is because I cannot and should not be hard coding these values into my HTML. Right? I have to take some sort of user input, take that input, and then slap it to the DOM. So how many of you have gotten through like the events and event listeners lab? Okay, so no. That's okay. I'm just trying to gauge like, you know, how I'm gonna like approach explaining everything. So the first thing I think that's really important is just understanding what this HTML is. If we take a look, pretty basic information. Here we have the JS that's actually in the head tag, which is interesting, right? We kind of left off the last lecture where we're like, hey, where we put the script sort of matters, and ultimately it's going to download and load at that time. So what I want to talk about later on is how we kind of can get around this, but let's just walk through the rest of the body for now. We have this div with comments, see a H3 that points to this here, and then a form, right? Who here loved form 4, form tag, like Rails helpers were the best? Okay, we're back. We are back in standard vanilla HTML. And so this is just like your regular form. I have a comments container. We have a really nested div here with lots and lots of children that have subchildren, and then 3 buttons. All I want to do right now, before I even get to this form, is actually have some sort of behavior happen when the user does something. So before we can get to the form, which is more complicated, let's do something super simple. And that is, if I do something like click this alert me, I want an alert to pop up. If I hit console log something, I want a log to pop up, and I hit console error, I want a console error to happen on my console. So what's happening right now?
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing, right? And so what I want to talk about is what are events? What are browser events, right? Why are they important? How do we listen for them? And then how do we actually do something? So web events are essentially anything that happens inside the browser. It's always listening. So when I move the mouse and I'm like taking the mouse and I'm scrolling over here, events are firing, right? It's tracking where my mouse is. It kind of has to. You ever seen that effect where if I hover over something, it changes color, right? If I click something, it's listening for those events. Whether or not I ask the browser to do anything in response is a different story. Those events are always firing. Cool? And so what are some types of events, right? Clicking the mouse. What about like drag and drop? Like if I were to take this submit button and try to drag that somewhere else. That's like a drag event, right? If I click this console log, I'm clicking a button. Everything that happens is an event. So what about a form being submitted? That's an event. When I sort of hit this submit, I'm going to submit the form. That's an event. When the user resizes or closes the browser window, that's an event. You ever been to a website where on the desktop, on your laptop, it looks perfect. And then you pull it up on your phone and like text just bleeds outside the box, or like it's just a really bad user experience, like the nav bar wraps and you can't actually click anything because, I don't know, maybe I have weird thumbs and they're too big. You ever like see something like that happen? And so what that is like web events are firing. When I do this resize, right, that means that my website's not really responsive. You see how nothing actually happens? I can affect that behavior because on resize, I can change the size of that form. Those are events that are firing. Now, if I can somehow listen for those events, when it happens, I can have JavaScript do something, right? Let's say it resizes to a certain size. I could change that form. I can use the DOM in JavaScript to be like, hey, let me move that form around. Let me change it. Let me make it look different. You might see something like Twitter. Again, this is through CSS, but it can be done through JavaScript. But the idea is this, like, let's take a look at how this website responds to changes. Take a look at the top left corner. You see that Twitter logo? Boop. So what you'll see is this search Twitter collapse. The search bar gets smaller. Moments will disappear. Home will disappear, but the logo will stay. You could do that through CSS, and you should. But the idea is that that's an event. That's happening. Your browser's listening for it, so it can do something accordingly. You just have to write the code to do something accordingly. And this creates a better user experience. So, any questions on kind of like events? How are you feeling about events? Kind of like have a good grasp of like what they are? Great. Thanks for the thumbs up. That's awesome. The idea is that now when an event happens, we need to do something about it. And so anytime you do something in response to an event is what is known as an event handler. So we're going to handle those events. So let's actually think through this sort of functionality. And that is, I have these buttons, and I want something to happen. So the first thing I'm kind of sort of thinking about is, let's worry about that later. Sorry, I left that in there as like a placeholder so I can talk about it later. Boop, boop, boop. Cool. So the first thing I'm thinking about is, right, when someone, all right, when the user clicks the alert me button, right, an alert should happen. Who feels like pretty comfortable creating this feature right now? Good, yes, kind of, maybe like, right? So let's think through. Again, my focus is always going to be on the process because I can't teach you how to build every single feature, but I can teach you how to kind of think about it. Then you can build anything you want because they all break down to the same things. So what are some of the important things that we actually need when it comes to understanding whether or not this console log, this alert me, this console error button is clicked? What do we really need? And this obviously references this morning's lecture. Huh?
Where it's at in the DOM, like the actual button?
Yes, like where on the DOM is it? Right, so we need to be able to have access to the button. Do we know how to grab something off the DOM in JavaScript? Good, right? So we need access to the button. Cool. How do we get access to it?
Query selection?
Right, we can query for it, either using get element by ID, get elements by tag name, class name, or we can use the modern version, and that is you can talk to the whole document, like, yo, document, what up, dog? Let me get that button. So if we take a look at the HTML, where is that button? How can we have access to it?
It's in helicopter parent.
Yeah.
Button ID right there.
Which one?
Button
Right,
ID.
specifically with alert. So I'm just going to go boop. Yeah. All right, very good. All right, so just make sure you're grabbing the right thing. And then you should always, always, always test. So I'm just going to group a quick alert. Sorry, I got into like Ruby mode. Const alert button, and then just to test it, I can do what?
Debugger.
I can either use the debugger, right? Or very quickly, I can probably just drop a quick console log and see if the alert button comes up. Is it what I think it is, right? That's super important. Bloop. Is that alert button the correct button? Am I grabbing any other button? Am I grabbing the wrong thing, the right thing? Right, so I'm grabbing the alert button properly. How are we feeling about just that query selector? Easy. So the next part is this idea that when someone clicks this button, something needs to happen. And so we can listen for those events using, wow, what a aptly named method. Something called an event listener. So on the alert button itself, not the document, but on the alert button, why would I want to listen on the alert button and not on the document? Yeah, it's specific to the button. If I'm listening to the entire document, that means that anything that happens to the document is kind of what's going to fire the event. And I don't want that. I only want the button. So on the alert button itself, I'm going to do add event listener. Now, if you don't know how this method works, boop, boop, boop. Just kidding. MDN. Boom. Look at this. Event target. right? So not just the document, just the target of your event. What's super important? And you want to add an event listener. It sets up a function that will be called whenever a specified event is delivered to the target. So you have your target, event listener, you have something called type, and the listener. There's some other things that you can do. That's kind of weird. Let's take a look. Usage notes. Wow. Examples are always plus plus. Function event handler. Okay, that's not like omega helpful. Interesting. So I'm taking a look and I see add a simple event listener. Okay. Okay. So I see something like modify text. Interesting. That all that does is it gets an element by ID, and if something is 3, do 2, okay. But how do you actually add the event listener? Looks like the first argument is some sort of click. And the next argument is modify text. What is modify text? What is that? It's a function. So event listeners, right, as you need to know it, essentially take 2 arguments. The first argument will always be the event. If I'm listening for an event, I need to know what event, because so many things can be happening on the browser. I want to specify the exact event that I'm listening for. So here in our very easy example, what event do you think I'm listening for? Right, click. Too easy. And the next thing is going to be what? What would make sense to you if I'm listening for an event and then I need to do something? What do you think should go here? That's right. How do you tell code to do anything? You have to write a function. So here a function goes here. Now we saw in the example, all the way on the bottom, all the way on the bottom, that it passed in, it passed in modify text, which is a function that already exists, right? The cool thing about JavaScript is that you can create functions on the fly, right as you need them, right when you want them. So this click is going to do this function. So I can either define it and then pass it in as an argument, which would make this what? If a function is being passed in as an argument, what is that called? Callback. So I'm actually going to create this callback in line. So I'm not going to write it outside and then pass it in. I'm just going to write it right in line, right here, like a champ. So far, so good. And without doing anything crazy, I have to test it. So we want this to alert. So how do we do that? Constant dot. We could do that. I think for short, it can be like, whoa, you alerted me. Smiley face. Let's see what happens. Ooh, spicy. We've now added behavior to our website. We have to test to see if it works though. So if I click console log, should that fire my event listener? No. So the breakdown of this is I've got the button. I'm listening for the button whenever somebody clicks it and then do something. Wow. I mean, this code is pretty easy to understand, just like reading it right off the bat. Cool. All right. Let's work through this together. Now that we've done that successfully, who wants to help me with this console log? How are we thinking about this? How are we going to approach it? And then ultimately, what are we going to do? Great. So grab that button. What? We can either do it. Okay. So query selector.
Yeah.
Great. Boop boop boop. Okay. How am I doing that? Where am I looking? Looking in the HTML. Okay. Okay. For what?
Log.
What is log?
IDs.
Specifically the log. Specifically the ID. That's the string log, right? That's gonna lock in and nail that button. And so, all right. Exactly. Yep. That was a very clear response, by the way, right? So just know, while hilarious and true, I'm looking for like, hey, you put the dot instead of the hash. So the communication in terms of like the pair program is super clutch. So thank you. Yeah. So hashtag log, and that's going to give me what? Why? Why do I have to set this to a constant? Right, I need a reference to this. And so, great. So const what? Loggy. Boop, boop. Great. So now I've grabbed that button. What should I do? Wow. Usually people skip that step, and then I go, but you got me. Got me good. All right, let's do this. So what should I expect to see on this refresh? How many logs?
2.
Nice. Is this the right one?
Yes.
Powerful. Great. What are we doing now? We can get rid of these logs now. What do we do now? Okay, we should add an event listener. Absolutely. Loggy.add event listener. Ooh, spicy. What am I listening for? Click. Okay. Remember, there's a million types of events, and right after this, I'm going to show you why we cannot go through all of them. Yeah. Okay. What is the second argument? A specific type of function. Callback function. It's powerful. Boop, boop, boop. Great. So I'm having this function, and then what should this do? Right. Log to the console. Yeah. Bloop. Nothing's there. Interesting. Why? Well, yeah, I have to wait for the user interaction. If I console error, boop. Ooh, powerful. Look at that. Boop, 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 boop. How are we feeling about just event listeners in general?
Oh,
Error.
that purple is.
Oh, because I did the color. Yeah. See how I'm like adding on? Okay, all right, I see you. Okay. Green for our favorite plumber friend who is often overshadowed. That's very good.
Okay.
Yes. Cool. How are we feeling about event listeners? Pretty simple, right? Let's do this. This is why we don't talk about every single event. Take a look at the side here where the scroll bar is. Oh yeah. The world is your oyster. There are hundreds of events that can fire. Hundreds. So things like click, right? A double click. Maybe the mouse down, which is different from just a regular click because you have to have a mouse. I don't know if the trackpad will register that. So you can force people to use a mouse. What is this, like $19.99? My God. Just kidding.
What's the pointing device? I feel like a trackpad would count.
I think a trackpad would count, you're right.
Could you switch it up just for giggles? The event instead of click, just change it to whatever your heart desires right now.
Drag.
We can change it to drag. But
Is there a highlight?
I don't know, actually. No, unless I spelled it wrong, but that would mean that they spelled it wrong twice. But yeah, there's tons of them, right? So what about when like a value changes, right? You've seen certain things where there's like an application where you like change numbers and you have an input. If those numbers change, you can fire an event. Hey, congratulations, your calculator's updated. I'm like, whatever it is. So pop-up blocked. That could maybe be like, maybe I have an application that's an ad blocker. And every time I block an ad, I can count +1. And then I can tell you, hey, I blocked 9 pop-ups for you because I've been counting this event that's been firing. You know? And so obviously you can see I can't go through every event. But the idea is I want to teach you the tools so that you can create a better user experience. So let's talk about this console error. It's going to seem divisive because you're like, why am I even doing that? But ultimately, let's walk through it one more time. I need to grab that button, right? Let's look at the HTML. How can I grab that last button, that console error button? Right. Right now, there's no way for me to lock in and grab this specific button. But guess who's the full stack developer? In the words of one of my favorite characters, the power is yours. You can just go in and slap an ID in here and just be like, And now back to your JavaScript. you have the power to grab it. So const, right, is equal to document query selector, boop, boop, So just, I wanted to point that out because I want to remind you that you're in complete control of the application. If something doesn't exist, add it. Make it easy and convenient for yourself so that you can actually do it. Good to go? All right, let's build out this form now. So I have this form and I want this to happen. And I want to hit submit. That was weird. What I wanted to do is actually just take that comment and slap it on the DOM. So how are we feeling about that functionality right now? Adding the comment. Like, I know how to do this, or better yet, I feel like I might be able to do it. I'm close, but I'm not exactly there. Well, let's think, right? Let's add this functionality. What do we need, first of all, when it comes to that form? In terms of really, like, what do you actually want to add onto the page? What do we really need? We need what the user is typing in, exactly. We need the input. So there's a couple ways to do it. Either you can have a very simple HTML file and kind of see what it is, but you can use the dev tools to help you. If I click this thing, boop, you'll see it turn blue. So one more time, see it turn blue. Once it's blue, anything I highlight over, it will tell me what the DOM node I'm actually highlighting is. Like, oh look, my submit button. Oh, the input. What's that? The entire div comments. Try to grab the form. Nah, it's hard to grab the form, but it will bring you really close. So if I click this, it will actually open up. Once I click it, this is what I've selected. This is what I actually want to grab. Right? We have access to that $0, which I quickly went over in the morning lecture. But the idea is that this input is super important because this is what the user is typing in. So once I have this input, let's see what's going on here. If I were to use escape, which opens up the console, and I do $0, because right now it's trivial for me to go over grabbing items, right? We know how to query select, we know how to grab the item, so I'm just going to use $0. What is important for me to grab inside this input?
ID.
The ID? Sure.
The value?
Yes, the value. Pay attention to like the timing of when you grab something. So if I do $0, which we know is the input, if I ask for the value, what am I going to get? New string. Because new comment is a placeholder. So if I do $0 and I ask for its placeholder, we get new comment. If you're looking for all of the properties to access on the input, what can we do? We can console dir it. Remember, that's going to give you all the properties, right? So if you're like, I don't know what property I want to potentially access for this thing, I can console dir the input. And that's going to give me all the properties of the input. So you can kind of see like what's inside. But let's do this. Let's add a cool comment. So if I go all the way to the bottom, I do $0, and I ask for its value, I get a cool comment. Because that's the current value that it is right now. If I decided to follow my keyboard, and I ask for it again, it's going to pull it at that time, at runtime. Cool? So, yes, we've talked about that, right? Let's write out the feature, let's talk about the steps, and let's break it down. So the first thing is we want to, right, grab the user's input. And we figure that out by essentially identifying we need the input tag. Wow. Specifically about the input tag, what do we need about it? Right? The value. So input.value. And then what else is like sort of important? In terms of understanding the behavior, understanding the entire feature. When should we grab the value? Right when the page loads? Should we grab it when alert me is done? When should we grab it? on submit, that's when we need to grab it. So do we submit inputs? Do we submit divs? Or do we submit buttons? Technically can submit, but we submit forms, right? If we submit forms, sounds like submit is some sort of event. What should we add the submit event listener to? Should we add it to a div? Should we add it to the input? Should we add it to a button, potentially? Like, what are we thinking here?
On the form submit.
Hmm?
When you submit the form, so when you press submit on the form.
Right. The idea is that right now we only have one input in here. How many forms do you know only ever have one input? Probably rarely. Probably rarely, right? Maybe just comments. Most times forms will have multiple queries and then a submit. All right, like, hey, register here, first name, last name, email. Right? There's multiple inputs. So when you're listening for a submit, it should be on the form. So we want to listen to when the user submits the form. Well, what does that mean for us in terms of what we need as information? Like, what do we need right now? What do we need a reference to? What object do you want to grab? Yeah, let's grab the form. Cool? And then once you have the form, what's important about it? Like, cool, you have the form now. What do we want to listen to?
The value they give you?
We already grabbed the value, right? Which is important. The action, right? Think through the whole deliverable. I have the form, but what's really important? It's only when the user submits. So I need to listen for the submit on the form. Cool. So without getting too far into it, let's sort of do this, right? Let's grab the form. How do we do that? Yeah? What is that? Wow, what a great name. So const, right? Comment form is equal to. There we go. Now you're getting it. Query selector, right? It's easy, guy. All right. Comment form. Comment form. Very good. It's how I sound. Great. Let's make sure that it's good to go. So on refresh, take a look at the console, and in fact logs my form. So I'm good to go. Right? Boom. Nice. Nailed it. We grabbed the form. Now we need to listen for the form. How are we going to do that? Document.comment form. Okay. Spicy. Yes. Exactly. You guys can be a little bit meaner, you know. You guys are all trying to be like nice. You're like, Evans, you made a mistake. You suck. Comment form dot. That's right. Add event listener. What event are we listening for? Submit. Let's verify real quick. Check our events. Is there a submit event? Ooh. Ooh, and a reset? Ooh. Ooh, okay. Okay. Take a look at that later. Only when it's submitted. Are we done?
No.
Wow, that was aggressive. I liked it. Okay. What happens now?
You have to add it.
All right, well, what happens when you submit? You need to write the funcciones. Okay. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to test. So I'm just going to log. Log that says submitted that form. I don't know why I'm really into Wheel of Fortune. It's America's game. So I refresh so that the code loads. Now, it doesn't really matter what I put for input, right? Because I haven't grabbed that yet. What I'm trying to test is whether or not when I submit this form, it's good to go. So maybe just some blank data. If I hit submit, what am I expecting to see?
Submit that form in the console.
Okay. It's going to come at you hard and fast. Pay attention here.
Can you change the color?
Oh yeah, can it not be purple?
Sure, it could be anything you want.
Black.
I like golden side, okay? No.
I got to refresh now. Great. Pay attention. Boop. Ooh. What the? Did you see that?
Oh, it appears and disappears.
It appears and disappears. That is a very good question. Let's think through.
Because it has to go somewhere, right? Somewhere on the server. Or it has to be saved somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, this class is so great. You guys are powerful. Said on the recording. All right, so what happens in Rails in your form for your form tag? What is the default HTTP request forms make?
Post.
That's right. This will attempt to post by default. But where does it post to? It just has an ID. Right? I didn't actually give it method post, and I definitely didn't give it the /awesome. Awesome. Let's see what happens when it actually has these details. File was not found because it tried to post to /wasm. That was actually a typo that I left because I'm a dirtbag. So it will in fact attempt to, by default, post. Interesting. It will attempt to post by default. Well, let's think through a couple things. When I'm here, all right, I'm listening for the submit. This function, this callback function specifically, has to know about what? If you were to say, listen, this comment form is going to listen for an event, it's going to listen for the submit, and then it's going to do something. What should this function, at least at a bare minimum, have the details of? It has to have the details of the event. This function needs to know, was it a click? Was it a scroll? Was it a submit? It needs to know those details. So, how can we potentially, possibly give additional information to a function? Where would you want to put that? Inside the arguments. So this callback function will always receive the event. Notice that I didn't use it up there because it's technically optional, but it will in fact know about the event.
Is it good practice to just put something in there?
You want to know what good practice is? Being a lazy dirtbag like me and just putting E. No, seriously, yeah, it's like, this is good practice. Use E. But it stands for event, so you know. That being said, if there's only some way we don't want that post to happen by default. So I want to sort of like stop a default action with JavaScript. Prevent default. Bless up. I don't know what this does. W3 schools, get out of here. MDN, baby. So event.prevent default. So toggling a checkbox is the default action when clicking a checkbox. Okay, you can prevent when you click a checkbox from toggling by using prevent default. Well, what about a form? I can take the event and I can prevent default. Boop. I make sure I have to call the function. All right, this is not going to do anything, and this will invoke the function. So let's test. On refresh, blah, blah, blah. The idea is that when I hit submit, it will not do the post request by default because I've prevented it. I've taken the event and I've prevented it.
Love that black text. It's black.
You know, dealer's choice was black, but yes, we could change the color. We'll do yellow. Cool. And now it's not doing that post anymore. How are we feeling about prevent default?
Realistically, would you want to do that? Because you'd want to store all the data, your users, right?
Correct.
But this
Yes.
is just like before we connect to.
Exactly. So
Sure it works.
yeah, so the idea is that, one, we actually have to have the code run. So we want JavaScript to do everything. We no longer want the browser to do it. We want JavaScript to do it for us. So we prevented the default. We're tracking. Does prevent default stop the full page refresh by itself? Is this, by definition, something that stops the refresh? In this, thank you. In this particular case, the event is the submit of the form. So in this exact case, it will stop the refresh. But if I put prevent default on a click of a toggle button, what will prevent default do, as we've read? Yeah, it won't toggle the checkbox, right? So prevent default prevents the default action of whatever is actually happening. So what I'm trying to say, and that's like a really important point to make, is I want to get out of pattern matching, and I want you to write code on purpose. So if for whatever reason I have a div, and I'm listening for a click of the div, and then I want a bunch of memes to happen, whatever, and I have a click here, and I see event.prevent default on a div, I will immediately assume you're pattern matching. Because what's the default action of a div click? That's right, the exact silence in the room, nothing. Right? If I click a div, nothing happens. So if I see you just slap prevent defaults in your code every time, I know you're just writing it and maybe not fully understanding it. Does that make sense? So we're doing prevent default on purpose here with the form because we saw that weird behavior and we want to prevent that. So how are we feeling about prevent default now? Check or hold?
Like, when's like the real application using it? If it's going to eventually, like, you're going to want to persist your comment and save it, why, like, what is the point of it?
That's his exact question. The question is, if I'm preventing the default, the form never submits. If it never submits, it never hits the database, and I can't save my data. That's going to be actually Thursday's lecture.
Preventing default. Sorry. Sorry for interrupting. But preventing default is preventing the submit? Is that?
Prevent default is, in fact, preventing the submit,
Okay.
yes. The form is no longer sending that post request. You've stopped it in its tracks.
I have a question. So I imagine that the submit action, the submit event actually does a bunch of things.
It does.
So when we prevent default, we prevent all of them at once. Can we choose like what we prevent? Like if we wanted to do one thing but not this other default thing. Just do it.
Can you prevent everything that happens? I believe what this prevents is literally the one thing that the form does, the one. Looking at phrases. Technically, a lot of things are happening, but the event is only one action. You're preventing that default action of it. So the easiest way to think about it is this is preventing the one and only thing that it's doing.
Is that why it's just frozen right there?
Yeah, that's why it's frozen. It's not actually submitting anymore.
So it's just chilling.
The easier way to think about it is that not actually a lot of things happen. It sends the post request, and it hits a route in Rails, and then the Rails does all the logic on the back end. This literally just hits a route and sends the data, the payload. So this actually just prevents the form from submitting. It never hits the post request, never hits a route, never hits a back end, doesn't do anything. So I'm preventing it from doing anything. Is that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe there were several things happening when you could submit and you can choose which ones you prevent and which ones not. But
This will prevent everything.
this would prevent.
I don't actually know how to cherry pick certain parts.
That's what I was wondering. If
Yeah.
it's possible. So we're really
It might be
writing
possible.
we are adding an event listener for submit action and then we're preventing it from doing what it's supposed to do.
Correct, because we want to create a better user experience.
Okay.
And that is, on your Rails app, when you had someone submit a form, did you enjoy that full page refresh? No, you want to see something like this, right? You ever seen this website before? It's pretty nice. I use it pretty often. The idea is that if I want to go somewhere, I'm just going to do this. Did my page refresh?
No.
Did my page refresh?
No.
No, but I got more data. I'm trying to teach you the skill where you can like grab more data. And so on that drag, which is an event, right, it looked at the outside borders, grabbed more data, and then it slapped it to the DOM. That's all that is. It's a little fancy, but that's really what's happening under the hood. That's why I want to teach you these basic skills. That's what every user experience is going to be like. And so the idea is, if you know how to use JavaScript, it can create a better user experience. And the experience we're trying to prevent is actually, you ever seen this website? There used to be a time, I don't actually know, haven't used this in a long time. Oh, yes. There used to be a time where in order to get some more information, I couldn't drag. If I wanted to see more, I had to hit this button. I had to click this button. The whole page would refresh, and then I would get the next square. I would hit this button, the whole page would refresh, and then I get the next square. That's the experience we no longer want to create. We want to create this seamless JavaScript experience where when something happens, we can react to it to create a smooth, seamless user experience.
I have a question. On the event listeners, when you have the action and then the function, if you don't have anything calling the event in the function, can you just leave the parentheses blank and not put the E?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
For the comment forms at event listener, how it has an E in the function, can you remove that if you don't use, like,
Yes.
you don't actually need
If
it?
you don't need access to E, if you do need access to the event, you don't need to put it in. And so you can see that here.
Is it would it be practice to just always have the E just in case you want to use it, or just not, just only when you're
If you don't use something, I wouldn't write it.
Okay.
Yeah? And so, cool. How are we feeling about prevent default, why we're learning it? Awesome. So,
I still don't want to learn
prevent default?
it. Yeah.
Because without prevent default, you can't stop something from happening and then intercept it and then override it with
Oh,
JavaScript.
okay, so that's literally just to keep the page from refreshing.
Yes.
Okay. Cool, thumbs up.
Yeah, good to go. So, we talked...
Are there any malicious applications of this? I can imagine.
I was ready. You could
There are weird bugs that will happen if you put prevent default. So for example, what do we add this event listener to? The comment form. If I added it to the document, what do you think will happen if I submit anything on the document? Nothing will ever work because on the document, any submit on the document, the default's prevented. I want to make sure I target what I want. So there are some weird side effects. I don't think there are any malicious security issues with prevent default. But yeah,
You can mess with users with it, I'm sure.
you can. You really can. Great. So let's keep going. Let's actually dive into what event is. So I'm preventing default. I'm actually just going to console log E. This is the event, right? Its submit type is submit. What was the target of this event? The form, right? So there's some important things. We'll talk about like bubbling and all that, but that's the idea. That's just the event. It's like, hey, you submitted and you submitted the form. That's the data in there. So keep going now. What's the next step, right? We've stopped the form from submitting. What else do we need? We do want to append child, but what do we want to append? The value, right? We never actually grabbed it, so let's grab that value. How do I do it?
You get it from the placeholder?
New ID with new comment. Input ID new comment.
This one, right? This is the one. If we kind of forgot, we can always use our powerful dev tools and be like, oh, this is it. So, const, right? New comment equals to dot, passing in the ID of,
New comment.
okay? Noise, right? And what do I need from it? The value, right? So should I just do input.value?
Is it going to be new comment down value?
There we go. All right, it's the new comment.value. So let's take a look and just make sure that we're all on the same page here. Timing matters, remember that. So let's take a look and refresh. Interesting. Line 37 is empty. Okay, so if I type anything else in, I submit. Okay, weird. Interesting. So what do I want to log? What do I want to test?
Make sure we're getting the correct value.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's console log. All right, let's do this. So let's see, comment equals to, just kidding. Let comment equals new comment value, and then I'm just going to console log the comment. Does this exist in this scope? Does comment exist in this scope?
What's up? It's like in the scope chain, but not in that scope.
That is actually the most specific answer I've ever heard, and that is correct. It's in the scope chain, but it's not available like in here directly. But do I have access to it? Will
Yes.
comment be something?
Yes.
Yes. That's a little smart. What do you think it will be?
Whatever you type there.
Why is it empty?
Because you're grabbing the value before it exists.
That's right. On page load, I grab the comment, I grab the value, and then when the user submits, the comment is actually the value that I grabbed at that time. At that time. How can I fix it? When do I actually want to grab the value?
Or on the submit side.
After the user submits, that's usually when something's typed in, right? Think through the user experience, right? On refresh, someone's gonna go submit, then type something in? That's crazy. They're going to go new, and then hit submit. That's when the input field will have something. So if I move this, boop, 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 and I try it now, it will grab the value. It will grab the value after the submit. This is why the callback is important. This is why JavaScript needs callbacks. This is why they need first-class functions, and this is why functions need to be passed in as arguments. So you want something to happen after. Is it finally coming full circle?
Yeah.
Right? Cool. Now the last thing is, what do we need to do? What was that?
Slap it on the down.
Yes, I want to create the element, right? So here I can do. Great. So what do I want to make? Another image tag? Right. P tag is fine, right? Quick const p. And then what? Well, what is p right now? It's an empty paragraph tag. What about the paragraph tag do I actually want to manipulate? Let's take a look at this right here. Let's break down some important key concepts here. Okay, great. Let's take a look at helicopter parent. Inside helicopter parent, what is the inner text of helicopter parent? Of this div right here. What's the inner text? Let's find out. Helicopter parent is $0 dot inner text. The inner text inside here is what? Hi? Alert me, console log something, console. It's only the strings that are the text between the nodes. What is the inner HTML?
Everything that's
It includes, oh, embarrassing. It includes all the HTML as well. Yeah? So what do we want to change about the p tag? The HTML or the text? For sure. For sheezy. So p.inner text is equal to, should I just hard code it? What should it be? Right, whatever the user typed in. Now that we've done that, well, what's the last part of slapping it on the DOM?
Append it.
Right, we have to append it, but to what? What might be a good place to put some comments. Oh wow, that was embarrassing. Yeah, the comments container. Cool. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to append it to equals a dot.
Query select.
Look like I sneezed there, and then a little bit of
Hashtags. What's it called? Container.
for sure. Okay, just kidding. Right, and then on the comment container dot append child, what are we actually trying to drop in there? Cool. So blah 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 blah. Bloop. Ooh. Ooh. Except, oh, look at this. Look at this. Do you still want that in there? What kind of user experience is that? 1 star. 1 star user experience, right? If only there was some way I can just reset the form.
Just refresh it.
Well, that's what we're trying to prevent.
I know.
We're trying to prevent that.
Little
Man.
programming joke, bro.
Man, if only forms had some sort of reset. Oh, man, that would be really nice. If I can just take the form and do some sort of reset. Wow.
I have a question.
Bless up, huh?
Before when we appended to the container, is that high is not a comment, is it? Never mind.
That high I just threw out of nowhere because I needed to prove inner text at some point. So that's just here.
There's no way to refactor everything you wrote, all that.
There is a way to refactor this for sure, but it's not important that you learn the sexy way. It's important that you learn the process. Like, this is the information that I kind of need to go through in terms of like creating that feature and that functionality. We will learn about better ways to do that tomorrow in sort of the review lecture. But this is the thought process. All right. So it is just about 2 o'clock. What are your questions about adding event listener? What are the 2 arguments it needs?
Event function.
Event and the
Callback.
callback function, right? Because you have to tell it what to do, right? How are we feeling about query selecting things? Do you know when you need to query select things? When you need to have access to them, exactly. Cool. Timing is important about when you grab the value. Where you write your code, look and see the readability, right? If I grab the comment here versus when I grab the value here will make a big difference. All right? What I want to talk about tomorrow, I'll introduce a little bit of a new topic called event delegation, and we will do a review on a lab. We will review Task Lister Lite, and it'll be cool. So this afternoon, let me just, are there any questions
Yeah. What happens if you hit submit
right now?
now? Nothing.
Technically not nothing. Look at this div right here.
So now, what if you add something now?
What do you mean?
Type in a new comment?
The empty p tags technically exist on the page, but they don't render anything, so they take up no space. So it sounds like we found a little bug and an error. What do we want to do?
Make sure that there's a value.
Yes, we have to make sure there's a value. So it sounds like only if there is value, or if comment is not an empty string, do the following. All right? Cool. Any other questions?
Do you guys want to prevent default at the beginning, like right at the beginning of the function?
This is best practice, yeah. Right in the beginning, you want to prevent the default.
So you pretty much always want to use prevent default when you're trying to not load another page.
You want to use prevent default if you want to prevent the default action from happening.
Okay. So
Right.
the default action happening will be to load another page and you want to use it.
That's correct.
It's not common form dot reset.
So comment form.reset, if I don't have it in, when I type in something like, it's still there. It does not reset the fields in the form, which creates a better 5-star user experience. All right, if there's no other questions, that's all I have for you today. All right, thank you.